Hello. Um, Coming to you the day after Christmas, if that's just a reference point. That's not really about celebration, or belief systems, but in the United States. And wanting to talk about feeling the need and the urge to talk about how to have difficult conversations, how to just the basics, the fundamentals of conflict. And I'm not talking about relationship repair or conflict resolution. That's another topic, and I will finish talking about that at some point. But for now, this is just the bare essentials for how to have difficult conversations or navigate getting triggered. Um, yeah. And a big part of that is coming for me from having done every single step of this wrong with someone that I care about a lot recently, to a degree where that relationship is likely completely over. So I'm really like been spending a lot of time mulling over these topics and factors, and so I'm not saying any of this is easy. I'm going to give it as simply as I can, but it's not a should or a shouldn't. We're gonna fuck it up, and I study this and know this, and when I get triggered from the trauma that I've experienced, especially relationally, um, yeah, I'll explain it in a second, but we can all lose it. So, yeah, okay. So, two main points here today. I think we'll see how this comes out as I talk about it, but two main points. The first and the most important is if anybody involved in the conflict, if their brain, their cerebral cortex, their personality, their ability to listen and to um, process information and respond instead of react, if that part of their system has gone offline, as we talked about before, when we get triggered, what that means, it's not just a word, what it actually neurochemically means is that the cerebral cortex, the part of our brain that we've been developing that holds empathy and long-term planning and processing and rationality and our personality and all of our coping skills, all that lives up here in the rest of the brain. That goes offline. Triggered means we're going into a fight, flight, freeze response, which is the most basal part of the brain. Attached to the spinal cord is the amygdala. And that part of the brain is the coping mechanisms that we learned 0 to 7. So, not really like adaptive coping mechanisms, usually, for some of us, maybe, but the maladaptive coping mechanisms of how we learn to handle stress. So, running, numbing, fighting, blaming, just whatever worked, whatever worked when we were a kid, getting sick, being the victim, um, being the hero, uh, helping everybody else, but in sort of a self righteous and condescending way. So, um, if anybody in the conflict is in that state, there is no point. There's no point in moving forward. I want to really make this clear because I didn't get this. I'm saying this just as much to myself as anybody else. It doesn't matter how capable you are, or how awesome, or how much work you've done, or how many coping skills you have. If it's just a hint, if it's past 9 p.m., don't do it. Don't have the intense conversation. Anybody in this engagement has the potential to go get too tired to function, to run out of resources to stay regulated and present, whatever it is. Like if they've been on substances, if if it's been a long day, if you know there's other circumstantial triggers that could be going on. This processing is working for me. That yawn was not because I'm tired. That was a I'm getting it out yawn. Um, which is a fun thing that I'll talk about in a second, but maybe I'll yawn again to remind me. So if anyone in the conflict involved in the situation, their system is that dysregulated, stop. It doesn't mean you're stopping forever. It doesn't mean you're stopping even for that day. Although if it's past 9 p.m., I'd recommend just stopping for the day because you're only going to get more tired. But stop. Whatever you can do to stop. And if possible, if the other person is dysregulated and you're not, communicate with them that you're not done yet. I love you. I care about you. Everything that you're saying, I want to understand. And don't blame them, but this has gotten to a place where it's not productive, or it's where we're too dysregulated to do this right now. So I'm going to walk away and we can come back to this in 15 minutes or 20 minutes or an hour, or and I'm going to go do some self-care, and I'd recommend you do the same, but I'm not the boss of you and I can't control you. So don't be like, calm down. If there's anything that dysregulates us more, it's being dysregulated and being told to calm down, because we're being reverted back to 0 to 7 years old. The part of our brain that knows how to calm down is offline. So you're talking to a small child right now. And think about how small children react to being told to calm down. They don't know how, and that's an impossible command, and so they go even further into dysregulation. Or that's one of their triggers, is to be commanded to do something that they don't know how to do, or are trying to do. They're trying to calm down. Their system has learned, probably from us, if this is a child-parent dynamic, that the way to calm down is to blame everybody. And that's how we blow off steam, or to go numb out, and we go watch the television, or we use substances, and they are trying to do the same, and we're telling them to get off their devices. So they're probably trying to do that. And the challenge, I'm going to go a little TED Talky here again for anybody who's interested. And I will get to part 2, I promise, but this is part 1, and this is so important. One of the challenges being in the modern world with the nervous system that we have, our nervous system evolved to be in environments with peace and then storm, peace and then tiger, peace and then famine, drought, war, warring, neighboring community. We were meant to be at a baseline level of calm, and then have a stress response to respond to the crisis, get through it, and then go back to our baseline. Our nervous system is structured in a way where we can get triggered into a spike, and it's not until we reach the peak of the spike, going through that fight, flight, freeze response, actively going through it. So we get the crisis happens, and that bumps us up to here, and then our response bumps us to the top of running or fighting, or so we've got to partition energy. We only have so much energy in a day, especially if we've been only eating, whatever, haven't been eating 3 meals a day or whatever, that we didn't have to fight for. We got to go to the store for. So some of our energy used on just assessing the problem. If you see my conflict resolution video, that's the step 1. What is the actual problem? Respond to the problem, or react, really, with what we learned in our childhood, which ideally was our community teaching us how to fight, how to run, how to um, hide, how to um, later how to like negotiate, um, how to fawn. Uh, so this nervous system response, it only resolves. The calming down is actually not something that we do. We don't calm ourselves down. We can regulate our nervous system a little bit, but that comes actually from, it's a little harder. The way that our nervous system is designed is an automatic part of our nervous system that kicks in once we've hit the peak. And a really great example for this is toddlers, because they're pretty much all amygdala at that point. And toddlers, their system knows that the tantrum is actually what's going to get them to calm down. So it's, I need the thing, and then don't get the thing from parent in the store, and then I don't know how to express my emotions, so screaming and crying, because that's what worked as a baby to get my needs met. And then the parents like, you're too big for that, what are you doing? And then we get in trouble more, and then we scream and cry more, and then we go full tantrum mode. That means kicking and screaming and fighting. That means running away, or totally shutting down, the freeze response. Toddler goes through that response, has the full meltdown, and then the parasympathetic nervous system kicks in, and you hear them go. That's the body kicking in. Okay, we went through the full cycle. We faced our fear, the fear of not getting what we wanted in this moment, because when we were infants, we got everything. Our parents bent over back. They worked so hard to figure out what would get us to stop crying. And now when I cry, they just say no. Whoa, that's a big adjustment. And so my system is going to go through the panic response that I never got to go through as a baby now. I never got to go through the full stress response because the nipple was there, the milk was there, the cooing and the burping and the everything was there. And now I gotta burp myself. Now I gotta figure out how my guts work myself. Now I gotta understand what was good food and bad food when all there was nutritious, yummy milk. So it's an adjustment period, and we're not Clary Poppinsing today. We're not going into what to do to parent a toddler through a tantrum right now. That's not the discussion. It's just to understand the system mechanics that are going on. Sympathetic nervous system gets activated, and it gets activated by things going on in our environment, triggers, whatever, scare, genuinely traumatic, scary things kick in, and then our reaction and response is what bumps it to then resolving, to resolving in our nervous system. The challenge in this world for a lot of us is that it stopped there. This is what a lot of PTSD is we weren't allowed to have our reaction. We were forced out of our freeze. We were forced out of our fight response. We were forced out of our flee response. We were threatened. We never got to have the natural reaction that we needed to have to work through this. And so it's shoved and stored somewhere in our body and in our system of where that fighter is, where that, that part of us. Anyway, that's going into IFS and internal family systems work, and that's a whole other discussion. So we got to actually get to the peak to be able to relax. I would sometimes do an exercise with parents where they would be extremely anxious, chronically anxious about their teenager's behavior. Understandably so, using substances, running away, joining gangs, all this stuff happening, like very scary things. They're living at a chronic state of stress, but they're never peaking because they're arguing with the fear. They're going, yeah, but we'll figure it out by then, and we won't let them die, and blah, 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 blah. Your system has already calculated all of the worst possible things that could happen. And so one of the exercises we would do is called the alchemist. And it's a way of just asking someone what all of their worst fears are. And I can teach that in another video. I won't go into that now because I'll lose my train of thought. But the alchemist it helps guide us to what our fear is so that we can hit that peak, feel the fear of our child being laying in a ditch somewhere dead, um, or the whole family being dead in cases of gang violence and things like that. And then they can go through the natural body sort of relaxation process and come back online. So all of this, the point of all of this is not relaxing so we can just be super chill about everything. The point isn't relaxing so we can go on a holiday. I've been watching British Christmas movies with my parents and going on a holiday. The point of relaxation is so that our brain can come back online. This beautiful, beautiful brain where we've been taking classes and we've been learning and we've been watching TikToks and we've been negotiating with our family members and working on how to do better and in our relationships and our partner has been saying, I really need this. I really need you to show up this way or to not say these things. They're really triggering for me. Like, it doesn't mean I'm gonna leave you if you don't, which is what I did. So bad. But it's we cannot access those memories and those mechanisms of behavior and the empathy required to care for each other. We cannot access those things when we're offline. So the relaxation is so that that part of the brain can come back online, and so we don't run our lives and our relationships and our finances and our parenting with a 6-year-old, with a 2-year-old part of our brain. We're running so many parts of our lives with that part of our brain. My house right now is a mess because I've been doing so much out in the world and exhausting myself in all these other areas that when I come home, the part of me that runs my home is 4 years old. It's just throwing things places and doing art projects and climbing into bed without having showered and just so we want to come back online. We want to be online. There's also a little depression in there, so there's a lot more to my diagnosis than just that, but it's a factor. And so relaxation is not some luxury word. It's to get back to baseline so that we can function the way that we know we can and are capable of, and we're so more triggered and angry because we're not doing things that way. That makes sense. I hope that makes sense. So that's our cycle. So if people aren't online, they're not going to hear you. They're not going to communicate well. Don't have the conversation. Don't do it. And sometimes it's unavoidable. And part of this, like, I was already offline when my partner started coming at me and then my reaction to that sent him offline. And so, like, he hasn't studied all of this stuff in the way that I have. Like, it's just it it is what it is. um I don't blame either of us. I look back on it with my calm mind and wish I'd done better and done differently, but that brain wasn't in control. It was a reactivity brain. So um and so was his. So anyway, point being, please, as best as you can, for whoever in the conflict is still online enough to know, let it go for now and come back to this later because we're only going to cause each other more harm. 2 4-year-olds trying to navigate conflict when they're both lids flipped, everybody loses. If they're regulated, it's fine, but when their lids are flipped, everybody loses. So just take some space and come back later. Okay. I feel like that was so important. I don't even want to mix it up by going to step 2. Yeah, step 2 is going to be another video, which I was going to title this one How to Navigate Difficult Conversations, but I haven't taught, that isn't what I've talked about today. I've just talked about how to avoid difficult conversations when you're not in the right mental state. Yeah, this is what I needed to get out. Sorry. So I will make another video at some point. I don't have any viewers yet, so I'm not letting anybody down um, with a cliffhanger. So this is this, and I'll come back to other things later. Thank you. Um, and here's who I had conflict with this morning. We were both activated, and he was just madness playing in the house in a way that was causing harm to some things, and I haven't cleaned and set up the house in a way that makes it so that he can go into madness mode without things getting knocked over and harmed. And that's on me. That's my responsibility because he's just gonna chaos kittens are just gonna end up everywhere in the home at some point. And yeah, go away. And so I put him outside in the rain, and he was not happy about that. And so he dug up my little flower garden on the porch, and I was very upset. So we both took some space, and we both calmed down a little bit. And he jumped up and got into my lap, and we're moving forward with the day. So I wish everyone out there just all the grace. This shit is hard, and we were conditioned in a broken system from our parents and caregivers who have been in survival mode for a long time and act like 0 to 7-year-olds whenever they get triggered and they didn't even know what triggered in mental health really was. So just wishing you and yours and everyone out there a lot of grace with the feelings. Doesn't mean the behaviors are okay, and we're going to talk more about how to take accountability for that and move forward in another video. So thank you for your time if I happen to get any viewers. Otherwise, thank you to me for helping me with getting this shit out because I needed to.